I'm Jonathan, I'm the lighting director for the Jonas Brothers. I got brought onto this gig by the incredible team at Early Bird and Silent House. The incredible Eric Marchwinski reached out to me and said, hey, I have a project I think you'd be a really great fit for. And that turned out to be Jonas. And we're now over a year into this tour, and I can say it has been a really great fit. This is a really unique tour for several reasons. And one of the first things you're gonna notice as you look at the stage is the lack of an upstage video wall. This design was created by Alex Reardon, Bess Halpin, and the team at Silent House to bring us back to the kind of iconic look of the par can rock and roll rig. Those shows are so iconic for so many reasons, and the brothers really wanted something that kind of paid homage to that, if you would. So there's very minimal video content in the show. It's a very lighting-driven show, and that means that my job is pretty busy. During the show, which is a long one, over 60 songs in the set on the day-to-days. It's a really unique show in that regards. The workhorse fixture of this show, there are two. The first is gonna be the Vari-Lite VL5LED. We have 72 of those in this show, and they're on 4 staggered trusses over the stage. And it's the look you see in all of the videos from the fans, in all of the promotion. The VL5's paying homage to that old school rock and roll look that we love. And they do so much during the show. The other workhorse is definitely the Vari-Lite VL3600 Profile. We have 114 of those in this show, and they do everything. They are precision keylight with shutters and perfect color in one song, and then in the next they're in a big ballyhoo, spinning around, color changes, they do it all. And it's very cleverly programmed to utilize those to the maximum capability. But then we also have a ton of other strokes in this rig, a couple different touches that we can use. We have 80 JDC1s scattered between our main stage and our B stage. We have 48 flares, also on those 4 staggered LX trusses that just kind of help complement the VL5s, just to add a little bit of pixel energy, some strobes to keep it from just being one straight sticks of VL5s. And we also, on the floor, have a bunch of Acme Pixeline IPs. Those are super cool. We run them in their highest channel mode. Tons of fun stuff on those. Lots of heavy pixel programming in this show, for sure. The previous tour was all very curved. Everything was curved. The lighting trusses were curved. The stage was curved. For this, the brothers wanted it to be a little bit, again, kind of more traditional, like iconic look of a concert stage. And so we have this Y thrust that is used very heavily by the brothers. There's a lot of time spent out on that thrust with their band, all 3 of them. It's a lot of space for them to move. As we get up close and personal here, one of the things you'll notice, we have this product edge light, pretty much lining every surface here on the stage. It serves a very practical purpose, and that is it lights the edge. It's by the folks over at Go Live Productions in Nashville, and it's a really incredible project that is kind of twofold. It provides some creative input where there's lots of bumps and chases that it does during the show, but it also is a safety net. You know, during the blackouts, the edge light is always on at 5% in like a dark blue, just to make sure that the brothers and the band can safely walk around the stage without fear of falling off. This is where the brothers make their grand entrance. They rise to a silhouette of lights, and then the audience, you know, goes wild every night for this moment. We have one brother center, and then one on each of the ends of the Y as well. It's quite the moment. As we walk onto the stage here, we can see the Acme Pixelines lining each of the band risers. These are really cool fixtures. They actually have, if we get close, a top RGBW cell, a bottom RGBW cell, and then an ultra white bright cell in the middle. So lots of stuff you can do with these, and they do some really cool programming during the show to keep it interesting. And that also lines our upstage handrail. We have a bunch of the 3600s here on the floor, kind of to do band backlight. We also have some on the sides to give that needed side light. You can see pixel lines and edge light pretty much anywhere and everywhere. We can see our VL5 trusses, the iconic VL5 there, along with the Solaris flares. And then beyond that, you can tell we have a upstage truss behind these VL5 trusses with the VL3600s and JDCs that shine through and silhouette these trusses during a good bit of the show. And we also have a similar truss just downstage of the VL5 trusses as well. We then have another truss just downstage to light all of our band, to do some key light. That's really important because, like we said, it's a really big band. And in order to light them, they move around a lot. We gotta have a lot of lights. So that whole truss is pretty much dedicated to lighting our band. Some of it's very specific, very focused in on, say, the drummer or the keyboardist, but then a lot of it is almost just a wash because they move around so much. It's a very cohesive stage look. It really translates well to all of the fans in the audience. There's just a lot going on, and no fixtures ever do quite the same things. Right, as we walk back down stage, you once again get the full look of the Y thrust, what the band experiences on stage. We have a 4-piece horn section on this tour, a cellist, and there's just a lot happening on this thrust at all times. It's basically choreography. There's a lot that's used. So the other element to this is our B stage. The brothers come out here multiple times during the show to have a more intimate moment with the fans on the other side of the arena. It's a pretty simplistic structure, really. We have a couple more of the JDC ones lining it to give some pixel energy and to also key light the band. And then we have these poles with little Solaris Mozarts on them, and then more edge light that was lining the whole stage. A bunch more of that here just to add some pixels and some flashes and to make this space interesting. They spend a lot of time here. We have a piano, and our cellist will come out here as well. It's quite the moment during the show. So my job primarily on the day-to-day is to maintain the artistic integrity of this show. It's such a long show, like we said, 60 songs, 2.5 hours. So there's a lot of lighting to this show. And that just means there's a lot of cues and a lot of things to look after, a lot of presets that have to be updated. But my primary job during the show is calling our follow spots. We actually have up to 13 spot operators on this tour. It's quite the spot call for me. The show is programmed by the incredible Mark Humphrey, who is a good friend of mine and a very talented programmer, and you can see it. There's lots of layers in this show. You have intensity chases on top of intensity effects, on top of color effects. There's a lot of layering in this show. It really brings that energy that you don't always see in a show. One song that comes to mind is a track called Montana Sky. I love this song. It's kind of simplistic almost in its programming, but there's a moment when all three of the brothers come and they sing into one microphone, and they're all very close together. The VL5s behind them are doing a really lovely, a dimmer intensity effect. We have something on the pixel lines as well, and it's just like one of those moments in the show that everyone pulls their cameras out and is videoing, and you see online, and you're just really proud of that moment. So the programming on this show is A+. We out front of house are running 2 MA3 full sizes, both running MA3 software for the show. There's a couple major benefits that we've seen on this show with it being on MA3 compared to MA2. One of them is just the amount of pixels on this show. Especially in the original design, there was so many pixels. And the recipe pixel workflow in MA3 is just so much more powerful than what you would get natively on MA2. It makes for sweeps and effects, everything to be created much quicker, and honestly, it looks much better. You can create things in MA3 using the phaser effect engine that looks like you're running, a piece of video content over fixtures, but it's actually all natively generated. So that's really cool. The other major benefit, especially when we kicked off the tour, we were playing a mixture of stadium and arena shows. And the stadium shows had a different lighting rig, slightly, than the arena rig. There were more fixtures in the stadium shows. So having programmed with recipes, in this show, we were able to just update the source groups, and then all of our programming stayed symmetrical. So if I added a bunch of JDCs on a line, You know, I just update that group and suddenly all of my effects, sweeps, everything remains perfectly in time, perfectly programmed. It looks like it was programmed that way. So much better than the old MA2 workflow of having to have dummy fixtures and to have to plan for that. Just really, really clean operation. And we have these medleys in the show where there might be 10 songs in a 12-minute medley. In the cue lists, as opposed to having the entire medley on one piece of time code, a 10-minute stripe of time code, we actually have each song within that medley, each 1 minute, 2 minute song on its own time code stamp. So that way, if the brothers decide we want to change something in a medley, we want to change a song, make it longer or shorter, as opposed to editing an entire 10-minute medley, I'm only having to edit the short portion of time code that actually affects that song. So really clever foresight from Mark Humphrey and Eric Marchwinski and the team who created this show. You know, this is a massive show, so many pieces, an intense schedule at times, and we have such an incredible crew from Solotech who've supported us along the way. This whole tour has been Solotech. So many components, and they've just been absolutely incredible to get the gear that we need when we need it. And then the crew here in the Europe run particularly has been absolutely fantastic, getting this rig up in practically no time and just being some really incredible people as well. And of course the vendors for their support on the consoles whenever we have an issue, being able to reach out to MA and any of the vendors has just been really, really appreciated as an operator and an LD.
I'm Adam and I'm the front of house engineer for the Jonas Brothers, and I took the gig over at the top of this year. Like, they've been doing this almost 20 years. Like, they get on stage, they know exactly what's gonna happen. They know how they need to perform. They know little technical things that are going on around them and how to deal with them, and they're just total pros about it, which is great. We get up and do a show every night. It's always a little different. On this run, we've been throwing in a cover song every night, so we'll rehearse that and give that a shot, and that always adds another element. And you know, we'll always just throw a couple curveballs in the set just to keep it fresh. So it's a lot of fun. It's a pop gig, but there are, you know, at times 4 people playing electric guitars on stage. So we try and, you know, make sure the guitars are, you know, part of it. They add a little rock element to it that way. It goes from song to song. It'll change up a little bit, and definitely on this tour, going through their entire catalog, things kind of morph as the time goes by and as their sound kind of changed between albums. And sometimes it's not as much as going back and matching that sound, but making that song from back then sound like the show we're doing tonight. So there's a little that goes both ways. You know, sometimes it's about going back and sometimes it's about bringing that song forward. The desk is maxed out. We cannot add any more inputs than we have. That also includes us having about 16 inputs for a guest band if we were to have one, which has happened on the tour, just to add in guests. I think I'm recording about 160 channels a night, plus all the other things that happen. You know, there's a drum kit, there's a percussion player, there's a cello player, there's, you know, 4 live horns, there are guys with a whole bunch of guitars, a whole bunch of keyboards, and just a whole bunch of stuff that they might pull out at any moment that we're ready for. So it's a lot of moving parts, but I've mixed gigs in the past that were lots of channels, and so I'm kind of home with that. It's just all about staying organized and thinking about things in blocks and groups and just keeping them in those sections so you don't lose track of what might be happening. Nick and Joe have the same pretty much vocal chain because they're the lead at most of the time with Kevin backing up. So Nick and Joe are both Neve Shelford channels, and for the most part into processing and plugins, it's the same thing. Kevin's is very similar, but doesn't start at the Shelford channel, and my right hand is just on the 3 vocal faders all night. It never moves from that position. It's, you know, who's singing lead, like pop them out front, who's singing backup, you know, who's singing an extra harmony, and just keep them in balance the whole time, because it's constantly changing, even between phrases and songs. Like, one brother will start, the other brother will take over. Everybody's got their own flavors. Nick singing into an SEV7, Joe sings into a standard 58, and Kevin's on a DPA. So it's all about just finding where they fit in, carving out a space for them, because you can only fight for so much of the same space. That's probably the biggest challenge. is not like anybody being hard or difficult to mix, but just finding a spot for them. And thankfully, the automation on the console does all the band stuff. And so for that part, I'm only writing like sections of band rather than worrying about chasing a whole bunch of stuff. And then I just make sure that the vocals are on top, because everybody here wants to hear every word they say. And then within balance of each other. The PA is situated so the main hang is in front of the thrust. And that is just to keep as much PA as we can off the thrust. So there's 18 KSL each side on the mains, there's 16 KSL each side on the sides. The side hangs do almost as much as the main hangs because the mains are so far forward. And then every night we have to hang a 270 hang off to the side just because the side hang is so far downstage. We might not be actually selling 270, but that hang in some way, it's on this tour, it's 12 XSL. It's just as important because it fills in a part. And then there's all bunch of speakers covering the edge of the thrust and the front of the stage, just to make sure that everybody in the front rows has a good experience too. There are 16 subs in front of the stage, and then there are 12 total in the air, and the ones in the air do a lot of the work for the people who are up top, and it's a nice balance. It also helps us between all the, there are multiple arrays to like keep the low end information coming from one source so it doesn't conflict between each array. It's great. It gets up, it's got a lot of great punch, it's got a lot of energy. We're never running out of power. Very loud crowds for this show. And when I need to get over them, I can get the PA over them. Most of the time I try to bring them to me, just because otherwise the show would be ridiculously loud.